Steve Jobs famously wore the same clothes every day. And it seemed kind of weird if you think about it. But his explanation was that by using the same clothes every day, every morning, he had one less thing to think about, right? Now, this is really interesting because when you look at Steve Jobs when he was younger, he was a clothes horse. He had like a whole wardrobe. And, you know, he would dress up for different occasions. For a while, he would wear bow ties. When he'd go to work, he'd dress in a nice double-breasted suit, you know. He was, like I said, a clothes horse. And he dressed very well for the times. I mean, you look at the pictures, I'm talking like in the 80s, right? But sometime in the 90s, in the late 90s, he stopped being a clothes horse. He started ignoring clothes, and he started wearing the same thing every day. You know, sneakers, jeans, and that black faux turtleneck sweater, right? And that was his uniform. And he said, like I said before, he said, it was one less thing to think about. This is actually really interesting. See, because it seems to me, and it's something that I've noticed, that creativity, personal creativity, is actually kind of limited. You have a limited amount of creativity that you can exert either in a day or a week or a month or a year. You know, we might not be able to measure creativity like the way you'd measure, say, gasoline in your car, but it exists, the finite amount of creativity. And so what's important for you is to be thinking, you know, how can I express my creativity where it matters? Because it's not really important if you express your creativity, your originality, in your clothes, now is it? I mean, unless you're a fashion designer, who gives a shit how you're dressed? It's not important. But other things might be. Or let me phrase it. It might be that your clothes are very important in certain settings with certain people, a certain crowd, right? And with them, you might need to actually dress very creatively and originally and in a very interesting way in order to express your creativity. You show them that you're very creative and what have you. But the point I'm trying to make here, see, is that you cannot be original and creative in every aspect of your life. You cannot be original and creative in everything that you do. You can't be reinventing the wheel every morning that you get up. You see what I'm saying? You have to pick and choose when you're going to be creative. You got to pick and choose the right moments. And you have to refrain from trying to reinvent the wheel at every opportunity. Now this seems kind of weird, but think of when you were a teenager, okay? When you were a teenager, I bet you tried to be creative all the time, right? You tried to be creative in every area of your life. The clothes you wore, you wanted to stand out and be different, right? You'd write a paper for some class and you wanted to be original and interesting. And so you'd do something that was kind of off the wall, kind of experimental, kind of out there. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes, you know, your professor would give you an A for your effort. I remember one time I was in an American history class and I wrote this extremely idiosyncratic paper for a professor called Jerry Daniel. Great man, a great professor. He taught me a lot. He was an expert in New England history. And I wrote this very, very idiosyncratic paper that was way outside the norm. I mean, incredibly original. And this professor, Professor Daniel, God bless him, he was you know, smart enough and wise enough and relaxed enough to read my paper, see how original and off the wall it was, and realize it was really fucking brilliant. And yet at the same time, it was so outside the norm. But even though it was outside the norm, he still recognized it for what it was, and so he gave me an A. Yay me, right? But that was the one time that happened. The one time. Countless other times, I'd been like super original with my papers and shit, and I'd gotten like a C, or a B minus, or a B maybe if I was lucky, you know? So I was like counting on my professors to realize how like genius I was, how original I was. And what happened? It hurt my grades. You see what I'm saying? I did not get any advantage out of showing off how original I was. At least not with most of my professors. With Jerry Daniel, with this professor at college, yes, it worked out. It worked out to my benefit. And he and I got along famously, right? And I got an A in his class, right? But that was the one time. And it was pointless, see? Pointless to show how brilliant I was because, at the end of the day, I really didn't have any intention of pursuing a graduate degree in history. It might have mattered, if I had intended to do so, but I didn't. See? You see what I'm saying? I was expressing creativity and originality in an area that would not benefit me and potentially exposed me to risk. Risk to my GPA that I might need for other endeavors. You see what I'm saying? But there's a lot of this temptation to be original, especially if you're smart, especially if you're smart and creative. You want to be original in everything. Refrain from doing that. Refrain from doing that. I'm not saying don't be original. No, of course not. That would be crazy of me. I'm saying channel your creativity in directions that will benefit you. Don't be, willy-nilly insofar as expressing creativity. Recognize that there are certain areas in your life where you want to be creative, where you want to be original, where you want to stand out from your peers. And then recognize the other areas, the vast majority of areas in your life, where it's not important. Now this happens especially with really smart kids, with really smart young men, that they want to express their creativity in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of areas and arenas in their lives. But you have to control it. It's like a wild horse, a wild thoroughbred. You see what I'm saying? See, a thoroughbred is the fastest horse around. Yeah. A wild thoroughbred, a thoroughbred, a stallion with like a lot of energy, a lot of drive, can run fastest of them all. But see, without control, that horse will never win a race. See what I'm saying? That horse, that wild thoroughbred, yeah, he'll be the fastest horse, but he's never going to cross the finish line first. He's going to be weaving around the track instead of going in a straight line to get to where he wants to go. Creativity is like that. Creativity, true originality, okay, is like a wild beast. And a wild beast can be very dangerous and can hurt you. But if you can tame it and control it and get it to go in directions that you want it to go, it can be your most powerful ally. And that's what you want. You want something that can help you achieve your goals. Because let me ask you, how great is it for me that, in the past I'd written these really original papers that were so idiosyncratic and off the wall that I got, just B's and C's for them, right? And they didn't help my GPA, and because of the not so good GPA, I might not have gotten into a good school, and not getting into the right school, maybe it doesn't help me get into the right job or what have you. You see what I'm saying? Use creativity to your advantage, but use it carefully and wisely. Consider where you want to excel and apply it there. Not to the vast majority of your life, because your life is fucking huge. There's the clothes you wear, the way you talk, the things you talk about, the people you hang out with, the courses that you study, the things that you do. There are myriad aspects of your life to be creative. If you just spread it around willy-nilly, you'll get nowhere. But if you focus it, it might turn out that you're not that creative. You have a fairly limited amount of creativity. But if you apply it well and focus it well, then you can get a lot out of it. A lot more than those guys who have creativity and originality, coming out of their ears, but they have no control. Because remember, like I always tell you guys, see, the difference between men, real men, and every other creature on the face of this earth is self-control, the ability to control your emotions and apply reason, logic, knowledge, good judgment to solving a problem. If you can control your creativity and focus it in ways that will give you an advantage, then you win.